Well, during the cold snap, we know a lot of people turned to the city's warming center.
That's right. KBU's Brianna Perez talked with city leaders who said they saw a record number of people using those overnight shelters. Right, Brianna?
Right now, across America, hundreds of thousands of people are going to sleep in parking lots, on side streets, and behind shopping centers, inside RVs and cars. Not because they want to, but because they ran out of options. They had jobs, they had homes, they followed the rules, and it still wasn't enough. This is not a fringe problem anymore. This is what housing collapse looks like in real life. Living in vehicles has transformed from a fringe survival tactic into one of the fastest growing forms of homelessness in America. According to HUD and advocacy groups, more than 650,000 people are officially homeless on any given night. However, this number severely undercounts people living in RVs, vans, and cars, because many remain hidden from shelters and street counts. Independent housing researchers estimate that 800,000 to over 1 million Americans now rely on vehicles as their primary shelter. This rise accelerated dramatically after 2020. Pandemic job losses, eviction moratorium expirations, and inflation combined to push millions out of stable housing. Between 2020 and 2024, median rents rose by over 30% nationally, while used RV and van sales jumped by nearly 40%. This data shows that more people were turning to mobile housing out of necessity, not lifestyle choice. Vehicle living spreads fastest in states with high housing costs and mild climates, including California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and Florida. In Los Angeles alone, more than 16,000 people are estimated to live in vehicles. San Diego reports over 5,000 vehicle dwellers. Seattle, Portland, and Phoenix report similar growth patterns. For many Americans, this situation is not temporary. Surveys show that over 60% of vehicle residents have been living this way for more than a year. What was once considered an emergency backup has become a long-term survival system for hundreds of thousands of people. The shift represents a fundamental change in how housing insecurity manifests across the country. The image of homelessness as only affecting young, unemployed men is no longer accurate. Today's vehicle-dwelling population reflects America's broader economic struggles. Studies show that nearly 40% of people living in RVs and cars are over age 50, and the fastest-growing group is seniors over 65 years old. Many are retirees whose fixed incomes cannot keep up with rising housing costs. The average Social Security payment is about $1,900 per month, while the average one-bedroom rent in many cities now exceeds $1,600 to $2,000. After accounting for utilities, food, and medical costs, housing becomes financially impossible. Working families are also heavily represented in vehicle-dwelling populations. Surveys in California and Oregon found that more than 45% of vehicle dwellers are employed either full-time or part-time. These include warehouse workers, drivers, healthcare aides, retail staff, and gig workers. Even with steady employment, wages between $15 and $22 per hour are insufficient to afford modern rents. Veterans represent another major group. The Department of Veterans Affairs estimates over 33,000 homeless veterans, with thousands living in vehicles due to PTSD, disability, or benefit delays. Disabled Americans face similar pressures. More than 25% of vehicle dwellers report chronic illness or disability. Without stable housing, managing medication, treatment, and transportation becomes nearly impossible. This crisis is not driven by poor personal choices. It is driven by economic math that no longer works for millions of Americans. The core driver of RV homelessness is the widening gap between housing costs and income. Since 2000, average rents in the United States have increased by over 130%, while median wages have risen only about 40%. This gap has accelerated significantly since 2021. By 2025, the national median rent reached approximately $1,700 per month. In major metro areas, it exceeds $2,200. Meanwhile, the median individual income remains around $46,000 per year, or about $3,800 per month before taxes. Housing experts recommend spending no more than 30% of income on rent. For the average worker, that means affordable rent should be under $1,100. Yet fewer than 20% of available rentals now fall within that range. At the same time, essential costs have surged across the board. Electricity rates increased over 25% since 2020. Auto insurance rose nearly 20%. Food prices increased more than 23%. Health insurance premiums rose steadily throughout this period. Even small financial setbacks now cause complete economic collapse. A $900 car repair, a $1,200 medical bill, or a single missed paycheck can trigger eviction. Once evicted, renters face background checks and blacklists that block re-entry into traditional housing. With wages completely disconnected from housing reality, millions are being priced out permanently. Vehicle living becomes the only remaining option for survival. The mathematical impossibility of affording housing on typical American wages drives this crisis forward relentlessly. America's affordable housing system has been shrinking for decades. Since the 1980s, federal funding for public housing has been cut by more than 60% in real terms. As a result, millions of low-cost units were demolished, privatized, or left to decay without adequate replacement. Today, the country faces a shortage of over 7 million affordable rental homes for low-income households. For every 100 extremely low-income renters, only 33 affordable units exist nationwide. Section 8 housing vouchers are supposed to fill this gap, but they are severely limited. Only about 1 in 4 eligible households actually receives assistance. Waiting lists often exceed 5 to 10 years. Some cities have closed their lists entirely due to overwhelming demand. At the same time, zoning laws restrict multifamily housing in many suburbs and cities. Nearly 75% of residential land in some metro areas is zoned exclusively for single-family homes, effectively blocking affordable development. Private developers also avoid low-income housing because profit margins are thin. Instead, luxury apartments and short-term rentals dominate new construction. Between 2015 and 2024, over 60% of new units were classified as high-end developments. As older, cheaper buildings are renovated or demolished, low-income renters are systematically pushed out. With nowhere affordable left to turn, many people choose RVs as substitute housing. The combination of reduced public investment, restrictive zoning, and market-driven luxury development has created a housing system that cannot serve millions of working Americans. This structural failure forces vulnerable populations into vehicles as their last housing option. Modern employment has become increasingly unstable across all sectors. Since 2022, the U.S. economy has experienced repeated waves of layoffs in tech, retail, logistics, finance, and manufacturing. By 2025, more than 4 million workers had been laid off in major corporate downsizing cycles. At the same time, full-time jobs are being replaced by contract and gig work. Nearly 36% of American workers now rely on freelance, temporary, or on-demand labor. These jobs lack health insurance, paid leave, and predictable income streams. When income fluctuates unpredictably, rent becomes extremely risky. Missing one paycheck can mean missing rent. Eviction filings spike during economic slowdowns. In 2024 alone, courts processed over 3.6 million eviction cases nationwide. Automation and artificial intelligence are also reducing entry-level and clerical jobs. Warehouses, call centers, and delivery services increasingly rely on algorithms and robotics. Workers in these sectors face constant threat of replacement. Unemployment benefits rarely cover housing costs. The average benefit is about $380 per week, far below typical rent payments. After benefits expire, families collapse financially. Without savings, and over 57% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency, job loss quickly leads to homelessness. RV living becomes a buffer between unemployment and the street. The shift toward unstable employment, combined with inadequate safety nets, means that millions of workers are perpetually one layoff away from losing housing. This employment insecurity drives the expansion of vehicle dwelling as a survival strategy across America. Medical expenses are one of the fastest paths into RV homelessness. In the United States, over 100 million adults carry medical debt, totaling more than $220 billion. Even insured families face high deductibles, co-pays, and uncovered treatments that quickly drain savings. The average annual health insurance deductible for employer plans now exceeds $1,700 per person. For family plans, it is over $3,700. This means patients must pay thousands of dollars out of pocket before insurance covers most care. Emergency room visits can cost $2,000 to $5,000. A short hospital stay can easily exceed $30,000. Chronic illness worsens the problem significantly. Nearly 60% of bankruptcies in America involve medical issues. People with diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and autoimmune disorders often spend $6,000 to $12,000 per year out of pocket, even with insurance coverage. Injury also plays a major role. Workplace accidents, car crashes, and falls often lead to missed work and unpaid bills. Workers' compensation claims are frequently delayed or denied, leaving families without income. Once medical bills go to collections, credit scores collapse. A drop below 600 makes renting nearly impossible. Landlords reject applicants with medical collections, regardless of the cause. With no access to loans or traditional housing, many people turn to vehicles. Medical debt transforms short-term illness into long-term homelessness. The American healthcare system's financial burden creates a direct pipeline from medical emergency to vehicle dwelling for hundreds of thousands of families. For many Americans, RVs and vans represent the final barrier between survival and street homelessness. Traditional shelters are overcrowded, underfunded, and often unsafe. In major cities, shelter capacity meets only about 60% of demand on average. During winter or crisis periods, that percentage drops even further. Shelters also impose restrictions that exclude many people. Pets are banned in most facilities. Couples are separated. Curfews conflict with night shift work schedules. Personal belongings are severely limited. For families and working adults, shelters often make stability completely impossible. Privacy and safety matter enormously. Surveys show that over 70% of vehicle dwellers actively avoid shelters due to theft, violence, or harassment. Women report especially high risk. LGBTQ individuals also face discrimination in shared facilities. RVs provide autonomy and control. A used camper or van can cost $4,000 to $15,000, far less than security deposits and first-month rent. Once purchased, it becomes a movable home that avoids landlord screening and long leases. Vehicles also allow people to stay near jobs, schools, and medical care. Relocating to distant shelters often means losing access to these critical supports. For many people, living in an RV is not about freedom or adventure. It is strategic survival, a way to preserve dignity, safety, and independence when housing systems completely collapse. Vehicle dwelling offers autonomy that institutional shelters cannot provide, making it the preferred option for hundreds of thousands of displaced Americans. As vehicle homelessness grows, cities increasingly respond with enforcement instead of housing solutions. More than 150 major U.S. cities now restrict overnight vehicle sleeping through parking bans, zoning rules, and no camping ordinances. Many cities impose strict time limits such as 2-hour parking, overnight bans, or rotating restrictions. Violations lead to tickets ranging from $50 to $250 per citation. Repeated fines accumulate quickly, creating insurmountable debt. Towing is even more financially damaging. Impound fees average $300 to $600, plus daily storage costs of $40 to $80. After a week, reclaiming a vehicle can cost over $1,000. Many people cannot afford this amount, permanently losing their homes. Some cities conduct large-scale sweeps, clearing RV zones without providing long-term relocation plans. In California alone, over 50,000 vehicle removals occur annually related to homelessness enforcement. Legal pressure is growing nationwide. Following Supreme Court rulings, more cities are expanding enforcement authority. Even when shelter space is severely limited, police may issue citations. These policies do not reduce homelessness. Studies consistently show enforcement increases instability and pushes people into more hidden, unsafe locations. Crackdowns convert poverty into criminal records, making economic recovery even harder. The enforcement approach punishes visible poverty rather than addressing root causes. By criminalizing vehicle dwelling, cities create additional barriers to housing stability. People lose their vehicles, accumulate debt, and face criminal records that prevent future employment and housing opportunities. This cycle deepens homelessness rather than solving it. Legal decisions now play a major role in shaping RV homelessness across America. For years, courts limited cities from punishing homeless people when shelter was unavailable. That legal protection has significantly weakened. Recent rulings have allowed municipalities greater power to enforce anti-camping and vehicle dwelling laws, even when housing options are scarce. This shift has encouraged aggressive enforcement nationwide. Cities now justify crackdowns using public health and safety arguments. While sanitation and fire risks legitimately exist, enforcement often occurs without providing viable alternatives. Legal scholars note that more than 70% of enforcement actions lack accompanying housing placements. Local ordinances also target oversized vehicles, effectively banning RVs from most neighborhoods. Some cities restrict vehicles longer than 22 feet, excluding nearly all motorhomes from legal parking. Court fines compound the existing problem. Failure to pay citations leads to license suspension, arrest warrants, and wage garnishment. Over 11 million Americans currently have suspended licenses due to unpaid fines. Without valid licenses, people lose jobs and mobility. Insurance becomes unaffordable. Registration lapses. Vehicles become illegal to operate anywhere. The legal system, originally intended to maintain order, now functions as a pipeline from housing insecurity into permanent marginalization. Each citation, each towing, each suspended license pushes people further from stability. Policy shifts have prioritized enforcement over assistance, creating a punitive approach to poverty. The combination of court rulings and local ordinances has transformed vehicle dwelling from a survival strategy into a criminalized activity, making it nearly impossible for displaced Americans to maintain stability. Homelessness is expensive, especially for those living in vehicles. While RV living seems cheaper than renting, survival costs quickly accumulate to levels approaching traditional housing. Fuel is a major financial burden. Vehicle dwellers spend $200 to $400 per month on gas for heating, cooling, and relocation. Repairs average $1,500 to $3,000 annually, often paid with high-interest credit cards. Insurance is mandatory but costly. Many pay $120 to $250 per month for auto coverage. Coverage lapses lead to fines and vehicle seizure. Registration, emissions testing, and parking permits add more fees. Some cities require special permits costing $200 to $500 per year just for legal parking. Storage is another significant expense. Without adequate space, people rent lockers or storage units for $100 to $300 per month. Shower facilities, laundromats, and gym memberships add another $50 to $100 monthly. Food costs rise dramatically without kitchens. Eating out and prepackaged meals cost 30 to 50% more than home cooking. Altogether, many vehicle dwellers spend $1,200 to $1,800 per month just to survive. This amount approaches the cost of rent, without providing any stability or security. Homelessness is not cheap. It is a high-cost, low-security way of living that traps people in financial limbo. The expenses of vehicle dwelling consume most income, preventing savings accumulation and blocking pathways back to stable housing. This financial trap keeps people perpetually homeless, despite spending nearly as much as housed individuals. Living in an RV without stable infrastructure creates constant health and safety threats. Extreme temperatures are among the biggest dangers. Each year, more than 1,200 Americans die from heat-related causes, and vehicle dwellers face the highest risk. Inside parked vehicles, temperatures can exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. In winter, uninsulated RVs often drop below 35 degrees, increasing hypothermia risk significantly. Fire hazards are widespread throughout vehicle-dwelling communities. Improvised heaters, propane stoves, and faulty wiring cause hundreds of RV and vehicle fires annually. Fire departments in western states report that over 25% of encampment fires involve vehicles. Sanitation is another ongoing crisis. Without sewage hookups, many rely on public restrooms, portable toilets, or illegal dumping. Exposure to waste increases infection risk. Studies show homeless populations experience 3 to 5 times higher rates of respiratory and gastrointestinal illness. Crime is also elevated in vehicle-dwelling areas. Vehicle dwellers report theft, break-ins, and assault at rates nearly 2 times higher than housed populations. Women face especially high vulnerability to violence. Limited healthcare access worsens health outcomes. Missed appointments, lack of refrigeration for medicine, and transportation barriers reduce treatment adherence. As a result, preventable conditions often become medical emergencies. Survival housing exposes people daily to risks that stable homes are specifically designed to eliminate. The cumulative effect of these dangers reduces life expectancy and increases emergency healthcare costs, creating additional burdens on already vulnerable populations. Long-term housing insecurity produces severe psychological strain. Research shows that over 65% of people experiencing homelessness suffer from anxiety disorders, depression, or trauma-related symptoms. Vehicle living creates constant uncertainty and stress. Residents must regularly relocate to avoid tickets, sweeps, or harassment. This perpetual survival mode keeps stress hormones elevated, damaging sleep, memory, and emotional regulation. Sleep disruption is extremely common. Noise, police checks, temperature swings, and fear of intrusion prevent deep rest. Surveys show more than 70% of vehicle dwellers report chronic insomnia. Isolation intensifies the psychological problem. Without stable addresses, people lose social connections, community participation, and professional networks. Loneliness is linked to higher mortality risk comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. Stigma compounds distress significantly. Being labeled homeless leads to discrimination in hiring, healthcare, and public services. Many avoid seeking help due to overwhelming shame. Substance use sometimes becomes a coping mechanism. While not the cause of homelessness for most people, addiction rates rise after displacement. Studies show substance disorders affect about 25% of long-term homeless adults. Mental decline is often a consequence, not a cause, of housing loss. It is driven by prolonged instability and chronic stress. The psychological toll of vehicle dwelling creates barriers to recovery. Anxiety, depression, and trauma make it harder to maintain employment, navigate bureaucracy, and access services. Mental health breakdown becomes both a result of homelessness and an obstacle to escaping it, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of instability. Federal, state, and local governments spend over $60 billion annually on homelessness-related programs. Yet homelessness continues to rise steadily. This raises serious questions about effectiveness and resource allocation. HUD alone distributes more than $3.6 billion per year through Continuum of Care grants. Additional funds support emergency shelters, transitional housing, and outreach programs. However, much funding is absorbed by administration, compliance, and overhead costs. In some regions, over 40% of budgets go to staffing and management rather than direct housing assistance. Temporary solutions dominate spending priorities. Emergency shelters cost between $35,000 and $60,000 per bed per year, yet do not produce permanent stability. Motel voucher programs often exceed $3,000 per month per family. Meanwhile, permanent supportive housing, proven to reduce homelessness, remains severely underfunded. Only about 15% of homeless individuals access long-term placements. Fragmentation is another major issue. Multiple agencies operate separately, creating duplication and inefficiency. Data systems rarely integrate fully across jurisdictions. Despite massive spending, outcomes remain weak because funding prioritizes crisis management over structural reform. The system treats symptoms while leaving root causes untouched. The mismatch between spending and results reveals a fundamental problem. Without addressing wages, housing costs, and systemic barriers, even billions of dollars cannot solve homelessness. Current approaches manage poverty rather than ending it, creating permanent dependency on emergency services rather than pathways to stability. Housing has increasingly become a financial asset rather than a social necessity. Since 2010, institutional investors have purchased over 2 million single-family homes nationwide. Private equity firms, REITs, and hedge funds now control massive rental portfolios. In some cities, they own more than 25% of all rental units. These firms prioritize profit maximization over tenant stability. Rents in corporate-owned properties rise faster than market averages, often 8 to 15% annually. Late fees, service charges, and mandatory amenities add hidden costs that increase total housing expenses. Algorithmic pricing software is widely used to coordinate rent increases across properties. Investigations show that some systems encourage landlords to keep units vacant to maintain high prices and avoid downward pressure. Short-term rentals further reduce housing supply. Platforms like Airbnb remove over 1 million units from long-term housing markets in major metros. Eviction practices are also more aggressive under corporate ownership. Corporate landlords file eviction notices at rates up to 3 times higher than small independent owners. Housing financialization concentrates ownership, reduces affordability, and weakens tenant protections. It transforms shelter into speculative inventory, pushing vulnerable renters into vehicles. The treatment of housing as investment product rather than human necessity drives displacement. When profit becomes the primary motive, affordability disappears. Corporate landlords optimize revenue through rent increases, fees, and aggressive evictions. This business model systematically prices out working families, forcing them into RVs as traditional rental housing becomes financially inaccessible. Most homelessness programs fail because they focus on short-term relief rather than systemic change. Emergency shelters, warming centers, and temporary vouchers provide survival support, but not stability or long-term solutions. Housing-first models show measurable success, reducing homelessness by up to 40% in pilot programs. Yet they remain limited due to inadequate funding and political resistance. Zoning barriers block affordable development throughout the country. Legal challenges delay construction projects for years. Community opposition, known as NIMBYism, prevents multifamily construction in many residential areas. Voucher programs fail when landlords refuse participation. Over 60% of voucher holders struggle to find units within allowed timeframes and payment limits. Workforce housing initiatives are extremely rare. Few programs connect housing directly to employment pipelines. As a result, income and rent remain fundamentally mismatched. Political cycles disrupt program continuity. Programs change with administrations. Long-term planning is rare in government approaches. Data sharing remains poor across agencies. Organizations track outputs, not outcomes. Success is measured in beds filled, not families stabilized. Without coordinated reform across wages, healthcare, zoning, and housing finance, isolated programs cannot solve structural displacement. The failure of current solutions stems from treating homelessness as an individual problem rather than a systemic failure. Programs address symptoms, emergency needs, shelter, and temporary relief, while ignoring the economic forces that create homelessness. Until policy addresses wages, housing costs, and market structure, homelessness will continue expanding regardless of spending levels. If current trends continue, vehicle homelessness will expand dramatically. Analysts project that by 2030, over 1.5 million Americans could be living in vehicles as their primary shelter. Climate pressures will intensify displacement. Heat waves, wildfires, floods, and insurance withdrawals will increase housing loss in vulnerable regions across the country. Automation and artificial intelligence will eliminate millions of mid-skill jobs. Without retraining and housing support, displaced workers will join the ranks of the unhoused. Aging demographics will worsen the crisis significantly. By 2035, 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65 years old. Without affordable senior housing, vehicle living among elderly populations will rise sharply. Cities may respond with heavier enforcement, creating larger encampments and deeper criminalization. Public health costs will rise. Emergency care and incarceration are far more expensive than preventive housing. Social trust will erode across communities. Visible poverty destabilizes neighborhoods and reduces economic participation. The choice is not between action and inaction. It is between organized reform and unmanaged collapse. Without intervention, RV homelessness will become a permanent feature of American life. The trajectory is clear. Current economic forces push more people into vehicles each year. Without fundamental changes to wages, housing policy, and social support systems, the crisis will worsen. Future generations may view vehicle dwelling not as crisis, but as normal, a tragic acceptance of systemic failure. Prevention requires action now, before displacement becomes irreversible. A society that forces working people and seniors into vehicles has already failed its own future. Have you noticed more RVs and cars becoming homes in your area? Drop your experience in the comments. And make sure you watch the next video, where we break down the policies that are accelerating this collapse.